What's up, everyone? Michael here with another topic video. Today we're going to be talking about how Obsidian is leaving the Armored Warfare development team, which is a free-to-play kind of World of Tanks style game that is actually fairly decent, or at least it was. I don't know about the future of the development of it, but it might end up having some problems after this whole shebang. So obviously there's three kind of questions I kind of want to ask during this video. One, I want to ask, obviously what's happening. So I'll go ahead and answer that question quite frankly off the bat, give a little bit of information on what's going on. And I also want to kind of question why isn't the game just closing down? Because Obsidian is the core developer of the game. However, the game isn't shutting down officially. Instead, it is actually going to be continuing development under another subsidiary that was already working on the game. So I'll talk a little bit about the development cycles of these types of free-to-play games. And then also, I want to answer, is this the end of the game? Is this kind of its shutdown period? Is this going to be the thing that ends up killing Armored Warfare, which most people probably don't know all too much about. And if you're watching this video and if you've never heard of it, go ahead and look it up, because back when I played it in open beta, it actually was not bad. I enjoyed it quite a decent amount. It wasn't fantastic because it was an open beta, it was fairly buggy, and it's definitely not my type of game, but it was fun. But you might want to hold out and see how this ends up going. So, real quick, a game in the background is League of Legends. It is a fun, really fun MOBA, and I enjoy it quite a bit. I'm playing the new kind of for fun game mode called Blood Moon, where it's assassins only, and it's incredibly fun. It's crazy, and I apologize for my terrible gameplay in the background because I'm trying to do a video at the same time. So some of my words might be a little bit exaggerated and lengthy because I'm trying to play while also getting destroyed in this video section, whatever. I can't speak. Oh god, I'm gonna die. Oh, sweet, I'm alive. All right, sweet. I didn't die. Anyways, yeah, well, now I'm dead. That was fantastic. Anyways, this game is super fun. So if you play League of Legends, check out this game mode. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk on to the topic. So what's going on? So Armored Warfare is a free-to-play game that is basically a World of Tanks style game. A lot of people like to call it a World of Tanks clone, although I wouldn't necessarily call it a clone. It's just a genre that happens to have a lot of games in it. However, it did almost become more of a clone. There was actually evidence of that back in the open beta, to where Obsidian, aka the core developer of the game, was actually talking a lot about how they were very restricted and stuff like that, and they were very vocal about their relationship with the parent company, aka Mail.ru. Now, the game is published by My.com, which is their sort of global, I guess, kind of publishing firm. Then they also had a game called Skyforge, which I will never forgive them for killing Skyforge, quite frankly. And Obsidian also works on Skyforge, so if you're looking for Skyforge information, we don't necessarily know what's going to happen, but chances are that Skyforge is pretty much dead as well for their core development. But basically what's happening is they are leaving to focus on other projects, as they said on the main page. However, there's a few different follow-ups on the developer blogs and on their sort of Reddit posts. If you go ahead and look them up, it is linked in their blogs as well, to where they talk about some of the problems that they had working with Mail.ru. And they mostly complained about the fact that Mail.ru was mostly focusing on the sort of a Russian player base in the Russian market, which, given that they're a Russian company, that makes sense. But at the same time, you kind of need to have a balance of what we're looking for in sort of the general market. But one thing about the kind of Russian market is they may have not had a sort of a World of Tanks style game, and so basically they wanted Armored Warfare to be that style of game. A lot of companies like to be within their home region, and so basically having Armored Warfare as their World of Tanks would be extremely successful for them, and that would be a great kind of deal. However, I don't have a lot of kind of credibility within, or a lot of faith, I guess, within their credibility of a company, because they did end up killing another game they had called Skyforge, which is actually a really fun MMO I enjoyed quite a lot. And it was actually a really fun game with a lot of in-depth mechanics, and you can end up checking out my review of it. It's a really old video, and it's not up to date whatsoever because the mechanics have actually changed in the game completely. However, they ended up changing the game and removing literally every single mechanic I actually enjoyed. There were tons of mechanics that I wanted to see more of within that game, and they just ended up completely removing them because, quote-unquote, the market in Russia did not want it. And the game ended up dying in both regions, and so I don't think that was necessarily true. But they ended up killing the game by just completely changing it based off of their own kind of whim. Now, Obsidian was also a developer on that game. However, the way that both of these games are developed is kind of interesting because it's sort of a game that is developed by multiple teams. A lot of these free-to-play games are developed by not only one team, but rather sort of a main core team that does most of the content for the game, such as League of Legends has a sort of core development team. And it's sort of an outlier because most of it is sort of in this really interesting state to where League of Legends is actually just one giant development team. But what they do is they have sub-teams. And so there will be a team that does whatever, and does this and does that. And so what some of these will end up doing is they'll have a game such as, Armored Warfare, to where they'll have the core development team that makes all the core design decisions, such as, maybe some balancing stuff, what tanks they're going to introduce, what sort of game modes they want in the game. And that would be Obsidian. They are going to be making most of the art assets and things like that. However, they will also have maybe 1 to however many sub-teams in the game, which will end up being sort of one of those cases where they will end up doing most of the patching. They'll do slight bug fixes, maybe making some quick balance decisions. So like, let's say there's a major bug in the game with like a certain tank or something like that, and they'll be able to kind of look at it and be like, all right, well, we're just going to patch this up real quick. And sometimes they end up making huge different sort of kind of content additions as well. For example, in League of Legends, this game mode that we're playing right now in the background is actually developed by a sort of sub-team that they ended up dividing outside of the sort of core gameplay loop of the development team. And so basically what they would have is they would have a sub-team developing this one game mode and balancing it out and trying to figure out how it's going to work. Now, this is really interesting because it sort of goes into play in some interesting ways when these developers end up leaving these teams. And so Obsidian is leaving Armored Warfare. And this means that the core developer of the game is gone, which means that the core development cycle of the game is probably dead, but it's not going to be guaranteed. So development is actually moving towards an in-house development studio. According to my.com, aka the global publisher for the game, they're moving it into a sort of state where there's going to be an in-house team that does all the updates for it, which is sort of the way that some of these end up going. However, this did end up spelling death for a lot of other games. Now, Skyforge is currently still being developed by Obsidian according to their About page. So they are basically still working on Skyforge, but we don't know how long that's going to go. However, Skyforge is mostly updated by an internal Alloyds team, which is another developer that they have under their wing. So I don't know if they're going to end up grabbing one of their other developers, such as Alloyds, or if they're going to sort of say that they're not going to be doing anything about it, and maybe they're just going to end up ditching the project altogether. It could be one of those games, because I don't think the game is fairly successful right now. It is mostly actually dying. The player base for the game is dwindling. Even in the open beta, it was incredibly difficult to end up getting a game, and it took over an hour to actually get a queue for my very first game. So I've only played like 3 matches of it, and I liked it because it was basically a more polished version than World of Tanks. And so yeah, oops, I just stole that guy's kill and I feel super bad. But it felt like a more polished version of World of Tanks, and I enjoyed it for what it was, not my type of game. But this kind of goes into the play of, maybe they'll end up going to another developer within their sort of selection of developers that they have available. And that's perfectly possible, and that could end up being the future of the game. Now, Alloyd's team is not a bad developer in the slightest. They make some good products as well, although most of their products are sort of co-developed projects, such as Skyforge when they were working on Skyforge, and Obsidian was the sort of other developer on it, and they did a lot of translation efforts, and they helped make like content for the game as well, and helped it kind of move along. That game would have sucked without Obsidian, quite frankly, and it sucks now, which maybe Obsidian already left the project, and that's why it kind of died. And so the game's not dead, and I find it very, very interesting to kind of analyze how these games end up working because of that sort of fact of, it could end up surviving as another developer. And, another example is another game that I have on this channel quite often is Phantasy Star Online 2, where basically they have an entire team based off of the collaboration efforts that they end up doing. So they'll have like a sub-team that would develop these other sorts of things. So, basically the guys that were already doing the patching and balance stuff, they're sort of working on the game as is. And so this kind of means that basically the core balancing of the game probably won't change. However, this does mean that the core content of the game may drastically change in quality, and that might actually end up killing the game. So is this the spelling disaster of the game? That I do not necessarily know, but I'm going to kind of determine yes, because this is something that has happened with several other types of games as well, especially under, let's say, one of my favorite free-to-play games back in the day was actually fuck, what was the name of it now? I can't remember. Rusty Hearts, there we go. Sorry, I'm trying to play League of Legends, and this is a very hard game to actually talk over. I apologize for that. I probably should have picked something else, but I really wanted to play this mode because I'm just like, it's really, really fun. Anyways, Rusty Hearts was a game that basically the core developer ended up falling down, and what ended up happening is basically the publisher of the game died, basically. And they were like, yeah, well, we ran into some financial troubles, and they were no longer able to kind of fund any sort of development for the game. And what ended up happening after that is that the publisher, or the developers under the publishers, ended up kind of falling apart as well, because obviously if the developer can't get paid, there's not really much room to end up moving out. And so you kind of run into a situation to where you literally have no money. And so, yeah, you got to close shop. And that was kind of unfortunate because the publisher did end up kind of crashing down, so they didn't really have a chance to recover. However, the publishing rights for the game did end up moving. And so there was a lot of kind of talks between, you know, like, let's say Sega JP, which was actually publishing the Japanese version of the game, to actually move development onto their side, but that ended up not working. And what ended up happening is they had an open beta that ended up just completely crashing in the Korean region. And so this ended up never being a transition that happened, which was extremely unfortunate because I really liked that game. But for the most part, I can't think of a game that switched developers and actually ended up being successful in the end in the free-to-play market. Now, there are big, giant, large titles and stuff like that that have switched developers and ended up being successful. I can't think of any examples right off the bat. Also, my video just ended, and so, yeah, we just finished a match. These are very short matches, which is why I picked it. I'm almost done. Sorry, guys. I'll put up some footage of another game that I was playing just so you guys have something to look at. But, yeah, so basically, I've never seen a free-to-play game come back from this sort of transition. However, I'm definitely ready to be proven wrong, but this doesn't seem like the game that's going to do it, because Armored Warfare is not particularly original, and basically, the other developer title that they were working on, Obsidian was working on, called Skyforge, is basically dead now as well, and I don't feel like it's going to have an extended market after this ends up happening. And so, yeah, basically, this is the disaster of that game. This isn't going to be the way that happens to all free-to-play games. You know, I think that there's a lot of free-to-play games that could end up switching developers very, very easily. But the reason why developers end up leaving these publishers is for major glaring reasons. It's pretty rarely a situation to where it's like, oh, a friendly leave, to where it's like, yeah, whatever, we just want to go work on our projects now. You know, that ends up happening when like a small subset wants to do something, or maybe they'll end up being like, all right, well, we're going to work on it less. Maybe we're just going to work on a few patches rather than working on a bunch of patches and making the core developers. So, for example, on Skyforge, they were just a sub-developer. And so they could end up still being on that project because they're not the one making the main content for the game. And so they only have to put in a little bit of effort, and they want to kind of focus on their main games, which I understand. And so they probably had a lot of frustration working with Mail.ru, and they were just kind of like, you know what, we're done, and we don't like the direction it's going. Let's go ahead and focus our efforts on our own games like Pillars of Eternity 2, which is looking fantastic. I wish I had the time to play a game like that, because Pillars of Eternity, I've heard nothing but great news about. So Obsidian is a great developer, and I really hope that, you know, they find other projects that can go. And it's kind of unfortunate that the two free-to-play games that I've played that they've kind of worked on have ended up crashing and burning because they ended up having this sort of agreement with Mail.ru to work on these projects. And it's unfortunate that they couldn't end up working with somebody else that ended up understanding the market a little bit better, more of the kind of global market. It would have been nice to see them working on something like, I know this would never happen, but let's say they went to League of Legends, they made like an RPG segment or a story mode. That would have been fantastic, because they'd be able to take all that lore and make an awesome RPG out of it within the sort of League of Legends game. And that would have been great. But, you know, obviously that's never going to happen, but it would be fantastic if they could end up doing that with a free-to-play title, because they're an awesome developer and I like their products, even though they're not targeted towards me and I don't enjoy them a lot because, quite frankly, you know, they're not within my niches and everything like that. But they make great games, and I'm very unfortunate, or it's very unfortunate that we're ended up seeing this, because Armored Warfare, from what I've seen of it and from what I played back in open beta, it wasn't a bad game. It was just kind of another game within a genre that's already polluted by all these other types of games that maybe are not high quality. I don't know, a lot of people like World of Tanks, and that's kind of dominated the market. But yeah, anyways, this has been Michael with another topic video talking about how Obsidian is leaving the Armored Warfare development. It's an interesting thing. I hope this video didn't suck because I was playing League of Legends in the background. I can't even remember what I was saying because I just remember the game mechanics and everything. You got to calculate so much in my brain, and I can't do it while making a video. I need to work on that. This is going to be my new practice game. I'm going to be practicing while playing League of Legends, and it's going to be very, very difficult. I should play it during one of our podcasts, because that'd be great, because I always talk about the podcast. We have a recent podcast, by the way. You can check it out. Anyways, yeah, we've been talking about Obsidian leaving Armored Warfare. Basically, the game's game's going to die after this. In my sort of perspective, from what's happening now, the game will still probably survive for a little bit longer. And so if you play the game currently, then you'll probably have a little bit of it. But I don't see it really going through, unless Outlaw's team or one of their other development teams, I don't know what developers they have under their skin, but whatever developers they can end up getting into the development of it, maybe they can end up making it survive a long period of time. But I don't see the same quality going through, because Obsidian is such a high quality developer that kind of matching that quality with the other types of developers that they have on the team may not end up happening. But regardless, it's an interesting topic, and hopefully I end up getting to do a video about free-to-play games in the future. I'm currently working on one because a friend requested it, so that's going to be a huge success. And I'll talk more about the development and stuff like that. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for that video and everything like that. Yeah, subscribe so you can see that. That'll be out either this week or next week. It's really almost done. And so basically, yeah, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Give your thoughts on the game. Have you tried Armored Warfare? Did it change since the open beta? Is it better? Is it worse? Do you think that it's actually going to survive? Do you think it's a game that can survive off of minor patches? Maybe it's one of those games that could end up just surviving for a very long time without any sort of meaningful content thrown into the game. Maybe they don't actually have to go through and develop new mechanics and everything like that. Maybe they just have to add in new tanks here and there and patch up the balance here and there, and that might be all. I mean, maybe it's a good game for that, but I haven't played it since then. It's not within a genre that I actually particularly enjoy, and so it's not really my room to say, so don't look for me for critical analysis on that game specifically. But regardless, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Oh, and also, I forgot, every time at the end of these videos, I was told that I should mention my other series, because it's one of those things that YouTube's like, hey, you should promote your other stuff. I forgot to mention, you should check out my impressions review. I have one of Mega Dimension Neptunia V2, which is actually a fantastic JRPG. So if you're looking for JRPGs, I have a review for it. And I also have a review for Rebirth 1 if you're interested in where the series came from and everything like that. They are great videos and great games, and you should check them out if you're into JRPGs. So yeah, sorry about that. This is one of those things where it's like, I gotta do it, and it's a little checklist thing that I have to try and be successful, and I'm not doing a good job at it. I'm sorry.